Arrgh! What is up, scurvy sea dogs? So today I'm going to do my my least favorite to favorite Running Wild album, and they got a lot of them. But I will say this before I get started: Running Wild did come out with an album, and I didn't realize it. I kind of didn't pay attention to a lot of things during the whole COVID BS, but so they put out an album called, I think, Blood on Blood. I've just recently heard a few tracks, and to be honest with you, it didn't blow me away. But it sounds okay, but I'm not going to include that in this list. I'm just going to include the albums that I've already had prior to that. You know, I've got them all, basically, except for the new one. So, all right, let's do this. So, well, a little backstory, you know, just a little bit. Running Wild is one of my top favorite bands. You know, they had a good stretch where they were like a perfect band, and then all of a sudden, I'd say around 2000 onward, they kind of turned into a very less than perfect band. There was that whole situation with Angelo Sasso, which is actually a drum machine. Yeah, so, and they've been using drum machines from the year 2000 all the way till now. Don't know why. It really, really hurts them for me. But I still love them. Even some of those later records are okay, but we'll get to that. But okay, let's, and of course I got into Running Wild in the early 2000s. I hate to say it, but my first album I ever got was Rogues and Vogue. Not the best album to start off with, but I relatively liked the album. But when I found out, you know, what older Running Wild sounded like, yeah, I was like, oh, well, obviously that's one of the weaker ones, actually. But anyway, let's get started. My least favorite album, well, actually, let's see here. Let's see how many albums they actually have, well, so we can rank this easier. Okay, they actually have 17 albums, but there's 16 on my list. So, number 16 is going to be Shadowmaker. Okay, so Shadowmaker came out. Okay, Running Wild decided to call it quits around like 2009-ish, I think. They even had like an album called The Final Jolly Roger. It was like a live album. But then they came back a few years later, and I got really excited about that, and they put out an album called Shadowmaker, which you can just look at the album cover and be like, okay, this is not your typical Running Wild. It doesn't look like pirates or anything. It's just weird looking. And I'm going to tell you right now, it is not that good. It's basically bland. I think there's even like a DVD or something that it came with. I can't remember where. And on that, like, it was like, you know, the making of the album, and Rolf even said something about, you know, making up a lot of the songs on the spot and not really putting much thought into it, like as if that was something that was cool or something. Like, dude, that's pretty much, it shows that you didn't put much thought into this. And it's got fake drums, and there's some really stupid songs. Just check out the song Me and the Boys. Yeah, just total butt rock. It's avoidable. Skip it at all costs. Number 15, Resilient. Okay, Resilient suffers from a little bit of the same problem as Shadowmaker, and Resilient came after Shadowmaker. The songs here are at least not embarrassing. They're just bland. It's Running Wild as if Running Wild had no enthusiasm and no joy or excitement. It's just going through the motions is what I feel like. So, not terrible, but not good either. Victory. This album, in hindsight, really isn't that bad. I just can really tell by the fake drums that it just, the drums really just impressed me the least on this album. And this was the first album that with fake drums. The songs aren't bad, but I feel like there's a lot of like just Running Wild by numbers. I mean, I just feel like a lot of the songs, which are decent, are just kind of typical Running Wild songs. Like, there's just nothing exciting. There's hardly anything adventurous about this album. So that's why that would get, what may I see here? I already forgot the number. 16, 15, 14. Okay, that's why that would get 14. 13, Rapid Foray. This was the second to last Running Wild album to come out, and I did buy this not too long after it came out. It sounded like Rolf was wanting to go a little bit back to his older days, you know, kind of write some stuff like he did in the 90s and late 80s, and roughly sort of is. It's just not nearly as exciting or creative, or I don't know. It's just basically, it's like those albums but with less enthusiasm, but it's not bad. All right, number 12, Rogues in Vogue. This one, as I said earlier, this was my first Running Wild album. I was at this local record store. We were very fortunate to have this metal record store in the early 2000s called Abyss Records. And, you know, I knew Running Wild was supposed to be a good band. And I seen the CD sitting there. It was brand new, just came out. And I'm like, I'm going to buy a Running Wild CD today. Well, little did I know, it's not really one of the best Running Wild eras, you know, that early 2000s, but be honest, I liked the album. It had a very strong 80s vibe to it. I thought that was pretty cool. Had a pretty cool tone, pretty good sound to it. A lot of slower mid-paced songs, but there's a few faster songs. Honestly, it's not that bad, but still not one of the, definitely not one of the best albums, but it's okay. 11, The Brotherhood. I bought this album a lot later in my Running Wild collecting days. I wasn't too excited about anything past the year 2000, so I kind of collected those albums a little sparingly. But The Brotherhood is one that you probably shouldn't miss. It's actually pretty good. I mean, sure, it's got the fake drums, but the songwriting's really good. And this came right after Victory, which I thought Victory is very bland and uninspired, but the Brotherhood to me is quite the opposite. Once you listen to it, you realize, oh, these songs are pretty strong actually. And the songs, some of them are a little bit on the slower mid-pace side, maybe a few faster moments here and there, but the songs are great. The production's better. The drums are a lot less annoyingly fake, although they're still fake. So I don't know. One you probably shouldn't miss. All right, number 10, The Rivalry. So this album is pretty well liked. I've heard some very good things about it, but if there's one thing I have to say about 90s Running Wild from like Blazon Stone on, I feel like they kind of got into this like groove, and they kind of just stayed in this groove and didn't experiment, didn't change a whole lot. And by the time this album came out, I feel like I was already kind of getting a little bored with their sound a little bit. Not like so bored that like it's unlistenable or just bad. I mean, I wasn't bored with it, but I just noticed when I listened to this one, I'm kind of like, yeah, I mean, I could just listen to Black Hand In or Pile of Skulls, and it's, I don't know, I feel like those albums kind of did what this album does, but it just did it a little earlier and maybe slightly better. So I just remember there was also one song on here that kind of sounds a little bit too close to the song Renegade from Death or Glory, which is one of my top favorite Running Wild songs, and I'm just kind of like, I feel by this point it was starting to get a little recycled. But still good. I'm not saying pass it up. It's still good. Worth having. Number 9, Branded and Exiled. One of the albums they did before they became Pirates. So this was their second album. And while I like this early pre-pirate Running Wild metal when they were trying to be evil, the first album was Gates to Purgatory, and then they came out with Branded and Exiled. I kind of feel like Gates to Purgatory is the better version of Branded and Exiled. I don't know. Branded's still good, don't get me wrong. I just feel like it kind of lacks a little bit of ideas that the first album had. And I don't know. It's good, but I just think it's kind of missing a little bit. But anyway, number 8, Masquerade. I think this is a very, very good album. Again, it kind of suffers from some of the same stuff that I talked about with the Rivalry. By the time this album came out, I feel like Pile of Skulls and Black Handed ended everything that 90s Running Wild really needs. So by the time Masquerade came out, it just kind of felt more of the same. But it's a very strong album. It's good. It sounds really good. I don't know. There's some really, really strong songs on there. There's one in particular that I really, really like. I can't think of the title off the top of my head. But anyway, it's a good album. Don't pass it up. Number 7, Black Hand In. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, is one of the best 90s Running Wild albums. I've heard a lot of people say that Black Hand In is the best Running Wild album. While I think it's one of the best, saying it's the best, I might have to disagree, just because there's a couple albums that I think really, really outdo it. But Black Hand In pretty much gives you everything you like about Running Wild, pretty much in a solid, very efficient form. You know, it's just everything you like about Running Wild right there. So it's good. It's a strong album. Number 6, Pile of Skulls. Kind of like Black Hand In. It's similar style, you know. You got your speed metal type songs, you got your regular slower pirate songs, you got your mid-paced pirate songs. It's all wrapped in a great production, blah blah blah. It's just everything you'd like in a Running Wild album right there. And I only put this one before Black Hand In because I feel like there's just a little bit more, like just a little bit more added atmosphere to these songs, just by a hair. But that's, yeah. So there's that. Number 5, and some people probably would really disagree with me here, but Under Jolly Roger. There's a reason why I put Under Jolly Roger higher than those albums. It's just because it's different. The 80s Running Wild albums, I feel like, were the most experimental, and this was the first album where they became pirates, okay? Where they started dressing up like pirates and having songs about pirates. And by the way, let me throw this out here. A lot of people out here pass up Running Wild thinking, oh, they're just singing about pirates. It's some corny pirate band. No, they're not. Anybody that thinks that is wrong. Yes, do they have a pirate theme? Yes, they do. Do they dress up like pirates? Yes, they do. But not every song they sing about is about pirates. They do sing about pirates. Usually every album has maybe a couple of pirate songs, but the rest of it's about world history, the Wild West, being a rebel, even aliens. They've even sung about aliens. So, like, there's more to Running Wild than just pirates, okay? And they're not even that cheesy about it. But as far as cheesiness, this is about as cheesy as Running Wild gets. I mean, the song Under Jolly Roger is probably the cheesiest they get. So, they're really not that bad. I mean, honestly, like, they're not like Ailstorm, okay? That's just totally being cheesy on purpose, you know what I mean? It's nothing like that. But Under Jolly Roger, to me, it sounds like, for its time, it sounds real ballsy. It still kind of has that rough sound from like the first 2 albums, and Rolf's voice is real gruff on this one. The songs just sound mean, and I feel like there's a pretty decent variety of ideas on here. I mean, there's a few songs that are kind of sort of generic, but most of them are really strong, powerful choruses. I just love this album. I can't help it. It just has a sound that I like. Okay, number 4, Gates to Purgatory. The very first Running Wild album before they became pirates. This album is so good, okay? Like, you know, It's pretty much like, imagine Kill 'Em All, but like 10 times meaner in tone. It's got like that kind of speed metal, early 80s speed metal, but some more heavy songs like you might would, or more like traditional songs that you might picture Iron Maiden doing, but meaner, I don't know, like a lot of harmonized guitar parts here and there. It's just really, really excellent, and all packed with a nice dark atmosphere. People that know me, I'm not really into this old like wannabe satanic stuff. I'm not into that really. I kind of like their pirate thing more, but just because it's different and not boring. But this album, I mean, take it for the music. It's really good. I love this album. Number 3, Blazon Stone. Let me tell you a little bit of something about the album Blazon Stone. I don't know why, but when I first got into Running Wild and was collecting all their albums, I always felt this one was generic. I don't know why. I didn't think it was. It's not quite as fun as like Pile of Skulls or Black Hand In, and it's not quite as atmospheric and original as like Death or Glory or Port Royal so it just always became the album that I listened to the least. But eventually I started spinning that one more and more, and I started to notice how subtly great this album is. Like, it came out after Death or Glory, which is an amazing album, full of creativity, and I felt like this one was just a lesser version. But if you really listen to it, man, some of these songs are really good. They're really strong. And one of my favorite songs is Little Bighorn. Love that song. Love the song Lone Wolf. It's a really good album. I finally got the appreciation that this album deserves. And I actually found out it is not generic. It's actually quite awesome. So it's definitely moved up. I would have put this one a lot lower years ago, but it's worked its way all the way up to number 3, guys. So that's pretty awesome. Number 2, people will probably disagree with me here. Port Royal. Why Port Royal? Why would an album with that sounds a little bit more flawed sound-wise and even vocally at times, why would I pick that over like Pile of Skulls or something? Well, I'll tell you why. Because this album is probably one of the most creative, one of the most, just it's got the most original ideas and unique ideas on it. I feel like this album was experimental. After they did Under Jolly Roger and they decided to be pirates, they expanded on this. But they're like, well, we need to do something more than just this simple gruff, heavy metal. Let's try to get more epic. Let's try to just expand. And it does. There's songs on here that sound unlike anything they've ever done before, like In the Arena and or is it In the Arena? Or something like that. Something about the arena. There's one song that actually Calico Jack has like this classical acoustic thing that's awesome. Something they don't do very much. I don't know. There's just a large variety of stuff on here, and there's songs that kind of like a precursor to what Running Wild would do in the future. The vocals are clean and even a little bit shaky at times. I will admit that. But the production's not quite as amazing as what would come later. But I can't help it. There's a charm, there's an atmosphere, and there's so many good ideas on this album. That is why it's number 2. It's just it's just kind of a special album in their discography for me. And last, certainly but not least, Death or Glory. This right here was the album that made me fall in love with this band. This album is perfect. This album does everything that Running Wild should do times 10. The production's great. This came out in the late 80s, like maybe 88, 89, somewhere around there. And this is the album where I'd say they kind of found their sound. For better or for worse. They might have like beat this sound to death over time, but the songwriting is great. Everything here is super memorable. Rolf actually found a perfect sweet spot in his voice where he could be a little bit raspy and still be clean, but very melodic. The solos are great, very memorable. So many songs on here, just like there's no two songs on this album that sound alike either. Also something Running Wild would kind of suffer from in the future. I mean, even the starting, the way the album starts off with Riding the Storm, it actually has this nice, big, epic build. And Running Wild has done stuff like this in the future, but not quite as good as this. Like, this is probably one of the best epic builds you'll ever hear on a Running Wild album. You know, you've got, you know, power metal songs, you got speed metal songs, you've got traditional metal songs, you've got slower songs, you got a lot of pirate theme stuff on this one. A lot of, you know, when you listen to this, I really feel like I should be on a pirate ship, sailing the sea, searching for booty. You know, like, seriously. So this album is just what perfection is to me for Running Wild, and really in general. This is just a perfect album in general. So there you have it, guys. That's my Running Wild list. I thought this would be harder than what it is, and after I gave it some thought, there's definitely, it was a lot easier than I would have thought. But you can kind of see how it works. The 90s and 80s stuff is definitely what I prefer. The 80s stuff gets a little bit higher of a push for me, just for being a little more creative. But the 90s stuff is still, you know, higher up. The 2000 stuff, you know, from 2000 on up, I mean, it's hit or miss. It's not all of it is bad. There's a few bad ones, but it's really just a lot of lack of ideas, a lack of inspiration and enthusiasm, but a lot of it's not bad. And as far as the new one goes, if I had to take a guess where it might land, I mean, it's definitely not as bad as Shadowmaker or Resilient. It might be somewhere between Victory and Rapid Foray. So, I don't know. That's just a guess, though, until I actually listen to it all the way. But, thanks for watching, guys. If you like this video, hit like and subscribe. Because I like doing these, or I do them for fun, and there'll be more to come. So, till next time.